children are in therapy for the most part, because of issues with their dads or because of the dad's behavior. But they're still there, and you can't just take them out of that space just because you've been 30 days clean, 60 days clean.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Stacking Days podcast, where we highlight the underrepresented stories of sobriety from within the BIPOC community. I'm your host, Ray Donovan. Excited about our show today. We got a brother, Daryl, who's here with us. He's going to be sharing his journey, all his trials, his tribulations. I feel like he's got a couple really good stories too, so we'll see how many of those we're able to get out of him. But without further ado, Daryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
You got it, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Daryl. Where are you from? How old are you? How long have you been alcohol free? What do you do in your spare time for fun? All that sort of good stuff.
Well, I'm 43 years old. I'm from Arlington, Virginia. I've moved around a lot in the metropolitan area. Um, I'm today almost 2 years sober and with alcohol, completely sober. But I like to say completely sober because I went through, and I'll get into that later. But drug addiction and alcohol addiction being one and the same, but a little bit different. I went through methadone clinic, but we'll go down that rabbit hole a little later. But completely clean and sober, going on 2 years this December.
Awesome.
But I was in a methadone clinic for about a year and a half, almost a year and a half. I completed it. My goal was a year, but I completed it in a year. What led up to me getting clean and sober? Where do I start?
Well, hold on.
As we
First
were,
and foremost, let me just say congrats, man, on beating those demons and getting to where you are today, almost 2 years in. Meth is not part of my story, but I can imagine when you stack that up on top of alcohol, that's a challenging, bit of quicksand to get yourself out of it, man. So I wanted to give you a shout out, flowers to you for that.
thank you. Um, yeah, my journey began like we spoke about. I was say no, you know what? I don't even want to say in my teenage years. Um, Alcohol runs rampant in my family. It's just super accepted. As kids, I was drinking beers. Me and my cousins, how when you're 6, 7, you sneak and swig the beer. So I'll
Mm.
say it started there. I had an aunt, rest in peace, bless her heart. She would give. I don't know if you know what the little pony beers was back in the day because I think we're the same age. I'm
Maybe
43.
so. Okay. I'm
Okay,
actually from
okay.
I'm from Canada though, so I don't think we have ponies up there. So maybe you could give the audience a sense of what those are.
So ponies were these little bears. They were Miller Lights, but they were like miniatures. And
Okay.
my aunt would get us like a 6 pack of those, and me and my cousins we would be able to drink a pony. So
Okay.
in the 80s, I was born in 1980. In the 80s, it wasn't, people smoked cigarettes around the kids, and it was a completely different ball game. So
Yeah.
drinking was like accepted then, but I didn't think that it would lead to what it led to as growing up. I'll say around 13, maybe 13, 14, had my first drinking experience. And to this day, I can remember being drunk at that age and feeling like this is it. I mean, being completely drunk, but feeling like this is it. Like, not in these particular words in my head as a child, but I just remember feeling like any anxieties I had, I can put it into perspective now. Any anxieties I had, any fears I had, any any shyness, it all went away. I just
Mm.
remember that moment, just being able to just be free, and I think that particular point is what kind of took it. It enabled me to be. How do I say this, man? It was like it enabled him to be everything I wanted to be as a teenager that I couldn't be sober,
Mhm.
and and that was a big part of the addiction. But at that age, you don't know that it's going to lead into full blown addiction. So I think it started there.
Yeah,
But what haunted to
you
me,
almost feel like you figured out a cheat code. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like you could talk to girls, you feel brave, and all that stuff comes into play when you being gut honest. It's like
Hmm.
uh, the things that it lowers the inhibition. So things that you wouldn't normally be brave enough to do, you were brave enough to do if you had a drink. And at 13 and 14, your mind not even really being fully matured. I mean, just imagine what you thinking, being under the influence. So that was around 13 or 14. That continued on. A little bit of marijuana, had an acid experience during that time. But that was as far as it went with drugs. When I was 16, I had a situation where I was arrested, and I did a lot of time in institution from the age of 16 on up to, I believe, 24.
Hmm.
So that kind of halted the drug experience, but then actually it didn't because inside drugs are there too. So, but it was just the marijuana and the drinking thing. But of course, it's not as rampant as it would be in the street. And before I get ahead of myself, I want to say this: like my mother suffers from alcoholism. My dad suffers from alcoholism, drug addiction. So when I was in prison, I learned that there's something called I forgot exactly the term, but you can inherit. Uh, addiction. Like
Hmm.
I'm not sure what the science is behind it, but it was a counselor who told me about addiction, and she was saying how you can inherit it through genes and so forth and so on. And so I always remember her telling me that. And getting out, I didn't come from the best area. I didn't have this best upbringing, drinking in the home, drugs in the home. Even coming back to those situations, it was just right there. So you got your head on kind of straight when you get out. You've been studying, you've been learning this, you've been learning that. And coming from 16 to 24 years old, you think you got it figured out. But I like to tell people in institutions, there's not as much rehabilitation as you think. Um,
Right.
it's it's really not. Then you have some programs, you have some uh, counseling programs, but there's a whole nother element that you're dealing with opposed to those hour classes that you got. You're in an aggressive environment, and as young men coming in, you can't completely focus on going to school. This is what they'll tell you. You have to do this class, this class, this class. After you finish and you're done, and that's what they mean in the courts when they say rehabilitate yourself. And you may
Hmm.
do an hour class for 3 months. But so fast forward, coming out, coming back to the same neighborhood, back to the same type of household, uh, just drinking. It was even more rampant coming out because people. It only progresses. It's a
Yep.
chronic disease, so it progresses, and eventually, if you in the barbershop long enough, you're gonna get a haircut. If you at the hot dog stand long enough, you're gonna get a hot dog. So eventually, I was literally right back in motion, but as an adult. So
Hmm.
it was more frequent. You're on probation, so you can't smoke weed. You know how that goes. So you're drinking more. And the alcohol just kind of took me to just, it just went to a whole nother level. But being inside and learning about it a little bit and coming out in 2004, I just remember saying like, I need help to myself.
Mm.
Like this is not right. I need help. So I remember going and calling the detox. And this is not that story, but this is another one. I called the detox and I
Okay.
told them, hey, I have an issue. I think I have an issue. I was with a friend of mine and she had an issue as well, but she said she wasn't going. So also I was in probation, so I wanted to kind of save myself. It was a two-part. So
Yep.
I went there. They asked me to blow on the machine. I didn't blow enough numbers. Luckily, it was a lady who had a son my age, and she came out and she was like, they were telling me they couldn't admit me into the program because I didn't blow the right amount of numbers. But she came out and she said, there's no way I could let this young man walk away from here knowing that he came here on his own, wanting to come in here. I have a son his age, so somehow or another, she got me into the program, to the detox. So I went into the detox. They put you in a room, you detox for 3 days, then you come out and you go to meetings. So that was my first introduction to AA meetings, like coming out of my room, and inside of the circle were older guys and older ladies from my neighborhood. So I'm
Mm,
like, whoa, I know these people, but they're
mm.
talking about drug use, alcohol abuse, and they've been through this before. So I'm like, that was my first introduction. And while you're in there, good.
Question: Did you the folks who you ran into in that group that you knew? Did you know that they were part of that group before experiencing them on the other side of the wall? Did you know that they were kind of struggling with whatever they were struggling with in the neighborhood, or you didn't know until you actually sat down and saw them sitting across from you?
Well, it's so normalized in my community that a person drinking, or you see a person, I know they're not at their super best, but I didn't know those details until I got in. Like, whoa, because
Yeah.
you open up in those meetings, and I'm like, they open up and about childhood, and these are people who are much older than me, and I'm like, for a second, I'm like, are they lying?
Yeah.
Because I know these people from my community, so that was my first introduction. But I went to tons of meetings while I was in there, and I heard tons of people come in and speak. So it was my first introduction to AA, NA, and but I say about 15 days later, I was out of there. I was like, I had enough of this, because they couldn't hold me. It was I could walk out at my will. So I left. Um, Went back. Of course, you think things are going to change. It's the whole insanity thing. I just went back to doing things like, okay, now I'm good. I learned a little something. So that was my first introduction in 2004. But from 2004 to 2006, 15, 16 is just a whirlwind.
Mm,
Literally a whirlwind. The alcoholism led up to, I'll say, in 2009. I hurt my ankle in 2009. My first job when I got out, I was getting paid like $7.25 an hour. I was working at a hotel, but I was in the kitchen. I was like the dishwasher. So I had to take the trash out. And I remember taking the trash out one day and kind of tripping down the stairs, but I didn't think nothing of it. I'm a tough guy. I just went back in, finished working. The next day, my ankle is like swollen. So I go to the hospital. Um, I I can never forget. They gave me a prescription. I didn't even know what this was. They gave me a prescription. I went and filled the prescription. It was 3 Percocet. I
mm,
never forget. It was 3 Percocet. I remember going back to work, ankle still swollen, and I had some young guys with my supervisor. They were from California. They must have knew more about it than me. They were like, "What'd they give you?" Because my ankle's still swollen. I showed them what they gave me, and I remember one guy saying, "Oh, they gave you the good stuff."
mm,
Like, what? Like, what is he talking about? And so I remember taking one, and I think that was my first experience with opioids, and taking that. Uh, I don't know. It kind of. I was like, I remember puking. Uh, Not to be too graphic, but I remember going outside like, oh, what type of medicine is this? And I remember puking, but then I remember coming back and like feeling great, and it
mm.
gave me that same feeling that I had at 13, 14 years old, that we were talking about, like
Right.
that bravado, and like I found the cheat code. I didn't know any too much about the medicine to get it again, so that time came and went, and I was still in the streets, still just not doing right, institutions, jails, hanging with the wrong people. Family is, fully indulged in drinking and alcohol, and a few of them are doing other criminal activities. So it led to arrests. It led to, I've been in detox. I've been to about 6 programs. I've been to behavior modification programs, which are like drug rehabs, inpatient. I've been in the Salvation Army program, all court ordered.
I was gonna say, are these all court mandated?
Yeah, court mandated. And sometimes when you live in that type of life, you do these things to avoid arrest, but the whole time you're learning. And I told a story on my social media platform where like it was ironic that I was in detox because I went there, spent that time, that 15 days there, and an older guy from my neighborhood told me this is what you need to do. If you don't want to go to jail, you need to stay in here because your probation officer is going to violate you or whatever. So I did that and then I left, like I said. But later on, I just remember actually needing the programs, like
Mm,
actually being in these programs and actually listening down and actually needing them. So I remember being in about 6 different programs. I've done them all. Uh, the last program wait, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. So 2009, 2010 comes along. I meet a guy. He tells me about a Vicodin or something like that. I don't even know what this is, but uh, he shows them to me. I take them. It was like a swap. I take it, and it gave me the same uh, feeling as the Percocet years before. And once I found that, whoa, somebody knows about these, that took me down the longest road that I've ever been down in my life.
mm,
It starts out as fun, but it was painful. I was functioning because, doing other activities in the street, I was able to function because, you got to be able to support your habit. And there's a thing that I always tell people in communities like mine, when you're making money and you kind of popular, you're party. But
mm,
if you don't have money, and then you're an addict,
mm-hmm.
and that's the way we look at it in the community. But all in all, you're an addict, and it just started getting to the point where I had to have it, and sickness. So that led to, man, it led to so
Well,
much opioid use. It was crazy, and I just couldn't. There were times where I was hospitalized. Uh, I'm talking about. I just don't want to make it, and I don't want to sensationalize it and talk about it in a way where, uh, like, put it on a. But it was just terrible for me, man.
well,
I'm talking
let me ask you. Let me ask you. Did you make that transition from you know being the dude who was just having a really good time, in his social circle, to the dude that folks are looking at and being like, nah, Daryl's an addict, or or maybe saying that about yourself? Because I know that you've had a bunch of court mandated interventions. At what point did you get to a place where maybe you're saying to yourself, I got to figure this thing out, man, because I'm not going to survive if I continue to go down this path.
2000, and it was 2015. I was found in a car, just passed out. S I remember being in the car, passed out. I was parked. Somebody knocked on the car. I'm guessing it was an officer. I looked in and said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." They kept walking, but they didn't leave it there. At the time I didn't like it, but I'm fortunate that they followed up because it led to me going to jail. But of course, I knew a counselor there in the jail who always wanted to help me. She always seen something in me that I guess I didn't see in myself. So she told me about a program, and it's nationwide. It's called Drug Court. It's like the toughest program in the United States. And I know in Virginia it is. It's the toughest program. If you can complete it, she told me, if you can complete this, you can learn how to live. And if you can learn how to live, you can stay out of here and stay off of drugs. So I was like, yeah, okay. Um, get me in the program. And so she told me about it, but she said, listen, it's very, very, very strict. I like, you can't mess up. It's very intense, and it was. But I told her, I said, if because at this point, like you said, I was kind of at my ropes end, and I was like, I got to do something. I got to do something. Like, I got children. I can't keep going to jail,
Mm.
uh, well, going to programs, things like that. So I was like, I got to do something. But truthfully, I just told her if I could figure out a way to live, then I won't even commit crimes and come back to jail. I won't use drugs and come back to jail. And she was like, well, if you can complete this program, I can promise you, you can learn how to live on the street. Because the program consists of cognitive therapy, tons of life skill classes. I mean, intense. So
Mm.
I was able to get into the program. I told her, I promise you, I'll be the poster boy of the program if you get me in this program. And I was the worst case scenario into the program, but because of her, I got in. And she said, if you can complete the program, it will allow people with your backgrounds to be able to get in because they wasn't letting people with my background in. I completed with flying colors.
When you say background, what does that mean? Does that mean folks who had, your kind of record with, with the law, folks who were coming from your name? Like, what exactly do you mean your background?
A combination, a combination of both. Because most of the people in the program, for some reason, it was so intense, but they had like DUI,
Mm.
driving. Maybe they found some weed in their car,
So
something
some
like
minor
that.
stuff.
Yeah, so I was like the most, my case was the most intense inside the program. So she was telling me, we want to open this program up for other people, and we could do that if you complete it. And I completed it. It was tough. There was a lady who oversaw the program, and she was a probation officer. Man, she was tough. She hunted you down. She stalked you every day because she knew that as addicts and alcoholics, that you still got your stuff with you. Like, yeah, you may be going to your classes, yeah, you may be going to your programs, but you're not completely changed. You
Yeah.
A lot of this is by force and not by choice. So we know, and I did like everybody else in the program, but you're learning as you go. And the things I learned about myself, and the things I learned about why my behaviors were what they were, um, that helped me a lot. The cognitive therapy helped me a lot, like really getting in tune with myself and exercise. And I
Hmm.
was boxing at that time too, so that was that was a big thing for me. It kind of balanced me out. And they would tell me, and I'll say this, like that exercise is an addiction too. So
But it's a
they would
healthy
tell me
addiction. You
it's a
do it,
healthy addiction. You're
right.
right. It's a healthy addiction. But they would tell me, be careful with that because as an addict, what sometimes unbeknownst to us, we'll pick up something else healthy, but we'll go and all we're doing is substituting, and it's
Yeah.
still throwing the balance off in our life.
Yeah.
So like I have to be aware of that now. Like my wife like going to the gym, and I love the gym, but there was times where she like, but can I get some time? And
Right.
I have to be aware that hey, yeah, I'm substituting a lot with the gym
Yeah.
or yeah.
That's
So
a good call out, man, because I feel like a lot of folks, that I've spoken to, and myself included, we turn to physical fitness as kind of like, uh, a correction, right? For all the abuse that we put on ourselves, over the years. And I think that's a good call out is we got to be careful about what role that activity that now plays in our life. And if we are now starting to exhibit some of that same kind of compulsive behavior, that detracts from like the overall health of our how we're living, in being physically fit.
yeah, and the biggest the, it's it overshadows or you kind of blind to it because like you said, it's a healthy substitution. But at
Yep.
the same time, it happens with a lot of things. Reading, studying, schooling. We just substitute and fill a void. So I think getting therapy helped me understand what the voids were and what I was trying to what I was using to because you're using to something. There's something
Yeah.
there, but there was a lot of neglect as a child. a lot of trauma as a child, and then going institutions as a teenager. That's traumatic in itself, brain not being matured as a young man, and yeah, it was a lot. But
I was
therapy,
gonna
go
I was
ahead.
gonna ask you, man, because I think that that's a call out that we should just park and like talk for a second. You know, when you start using any kind of substance that is altering at a young age, we all know that that stunts your development, right? And and you kind of had a two part challenge that you were up against, not only the substances, but then at a very young age you spent time in within the correctional system, which I'm which is not normal for for a developing child. So how did you get to a point through your cognitive therapy and maybe these life skill classes down the line where you could start to reconcile some of these things for yourself so you could move forward and in a much more kind of well-rounded manner for yourself? Because I mean, even in my experience, like there are certain things that I come across in my 40s that I'm not entirely equipped to be able to deal with, because I never really kind of nurtured that strength, that muscle within myself. I'm much more mindful about it now, so I can approach it differently, as a mature man. But I am curious, how did you start unlocking some of those things for yourself as you're as you're on this journey to try to heal yourself, so you didn't step back into this lifestyle that you knew was not going to be serving you?
I took it upon myself to try to be, and it's hard sometimes, even now, because I'm still a work in progress, to try to be as self-aware as possible.
Hmm.
And even now, like sometimes you can get outside of yourself and lose yourself. And it's a day to day thing. So I have to keep a lot of things up front, but therapy, and like now, I see a therapist, I see a counselor, I see a psychiatrist, and like we spoke earlier, um, PTSD is a big part of my story, anxiety, depression. So of course there were medications prescribed, and I promote, go and see somebody, go and talk to somebody. So I think that doctors putting into perspective, and me just being gut honest and telling them what my feelings were, what my experiences were, and not holding back. Like
Hmm.
it's just like if you ever had a lawyer, your lawyers, no matter how bad the crime is, your lawyer will tell me the truth. What
Hmm.
happened? Because they need to develop a defense for you. It's the same thing with a therapist or a psychiatrist. You have to be gut honest if you want things put into perspective for you, and broken down to you for you to understand. And there was a time in the program when I was doing the cognitive therapy, I was kind of just saying, I was participating, but I was still saying what I thought was sounded good.
Hmm.
And that kind of it stagnated me. So moving forward, my wife and I got therapy, and I met a therapist while I was here. It was virtual, and she helped me tremendously. But I had to be honest with her, and that's what I learned about vulnerability. So to answer your question, just being vulnerable, and after receiving the information she would give me, just trying to hold it up front as much as I possibly can and be self aware. But my wife on my journey has helped me tons because we got each other to bounce off of, and she's been able to understand some character defects she may have had in herself as well, and we're able to correct each other. So I think the partnership and going into therapy, and also having that, you know, how they say it, you going in, it's like partner mode. People going into treatment that way. Sometimes it's like the buddy system.
The
So you're able to,
accountability partner.
yeah. So you're able to pick each other up and
Mm.
learn one another, which helps you learn yourself. So I think just being as self-aware as I possibly can, being as vulnerable as I possibly can in therapy. And therapy is hard because the therapist is like, I don't know, to me they're kind of like puppeteers sometimes, and they know how to take you up. They can take you down. Some days you don't want to talk to them. Some days
Yep.
you're happy, and a lot of people need to know that it's work. So just doing the work, and I'm still doing the work, and yeah, I'm just a work in progress. But again, to answer your question, I think that learning what I learned and then putting things in perspective and me keeping it up at, as upfront as I can and being as honest with myself as I can. Because as human beings, we like to, we'll trick ourselves into thinking whatever so that we feel better. I try to be as honest with myself as I possibly can, and my wife should help me call it out. And yeah, I think that's what helped me.
Is your wife also someone who's recovering? Is that did I understand that correctly?
No, no. But what's what was great was I was able to, um, by us going through counseling and she seeing me growing and seeing me getting sober and things like that. No, she's not going through recovery, but she was able to, with me doing that, go and sit down and get things put into perspective for herself as well.
Right.
So it was twofold, and it helped. So when you have one person going through recovery, um, sometimes there's misunderstandings because now this person is being woken to certain things they weren't woke to before. This person is maybe not understanding them. But if you have two people in growth programs, then it's like, hey, look at this tool I just got. Hey, look at
Yeah.
this tool I just got. And you constantly having conversations like that. So it creates a space where even outside of the marriage, even outside of your friendship, outside of your marriage, you got a space over here where you guys often go to and grow and talk about things. So I think that's helped a lot.
I'll say that I echo what your sentiment there, because it's not often in life when you get to your 30s, your 40s, where you can really just do some serious recreation of yourself. You can do a recreation of your partnerships, with your loved one, and it is work. It can be painful at times, but you got to believe that the net benefit is going to continue to propel you in a positive direction, right? Like, so I think that that's a fantastic sentiment, that that you're able to kind of get in there with your wife, and she's on her own growth trajectory, you clearly are on yours, and you can meet back in support of one another as you figure out how do you grow this union that you all have, that I'm assuming means a lot to you.
Absolutely. And yeah, her growth, she's grown a lot,
Mm.
tremendously. Yeah. And she thanks
uh
me all the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
she thanks you.
Yeah, she thanks me. So I'm guessing like my troublesome path and my recovery kind of led to all of this. Like
That's cool.
getting help and seeing doctors and yeah. So she says thank you all the time, and I'm like, no, thank you, because she was the person who was there when I was in the hospital. She was the person who found methadone clinics when I'm like, methadone clinic, what? She was the person who found doctors for Suboxone. She was the first person who got on and found therapists. These weren't things that I did. So
Right.
I was just in the storm, and she was outside of it, going through it with me, but assisting. And her doing that, I don't know, it helped out. So she reminded me the other day. I'm like, women pay attention to the particulars, and
Mm.
she reminded me of that the other day. You remember you said that? And I'm like, yeah, but yeah, my journey led to her journey. So
That's good, man. I mean, talk to me about your kids. I know you mentioned briefly that you're a dad. How many you have? How old are they?
yeah, I got an 18-year-old. I got a 17-year-old. I got quite a few. I got
Okay,
quite a
fair.
few. Yeah, yeah, I got quite a few. So, coming up in the my community, I like to use this not parable, but I like to use this example. In my community, you can have a guy. We could be playing basketball. You can have a guy run down and say, "Hey, Eric's home from college. He just got home. He's up the street." Right?
Mm,
And when people be like somewhat excited, oh, tell him I said hi. That's cool. Tell him I said hi. Or come down here and play basketball. You can have the same guy run down the street and say, hey, Tony just got out from doing 5 years, and the whole court goes crazy. Where is he? Blah, 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 blah. So it's like so backwards, so abnormal, but it's normal. So coming out of institutions for some reason in communities like mine, you're like almost popular,
Right.
and that
Celebrated.
leads, yeah, you celebrate it for things like that. And as a young man coming out of institutions or corrections, and it, what comes with it. It's almost like you're a football star in high school, and you don't have any life skills. I was you just coming out there, and you just and it's females, and you've been away, and so I didn't do right, and that just led to me being promiscuous and having children, and when I think back to it, when I think back now, I'm like the decisions I would have made if I known what I made now, just logical decisions, like you have to be ready to parent. You have to have your finances in order. You have to. It just makes so much sense to me now. And I'm like, I didn't know none of this back then.
Mm.
Like I thought my thought process was nowhere near what it is now. How did I even do that? But yeah, so I got beautiful children. My relationships with them now are improving, but you got to think there was and still probably is a lot of bitterness going in and out. I always been there with them and loved them, but I had a lot of distance being in programs and being in institutions, but it's getting better now. It's like day by day. I have relationships and talking. Just
Yeah. How do you approach that, when you're trying to reconcile, with your children and potentially, they feel some degree of betrayal? I mean, I assume, how do you kind of enter back into that space and try to paint a picture of you being a man who is in healing and growth and, extend that olive branch to a point where, they want to join you in that conversation?
I'll say, just truthfully, I learned really fast that getting yourself together and trying to reach out and say, hey, look what I'm doing, that doesn't work. It
Mm,
just does not work, because a person is still left, and especially children, they're still left in that space emotionally, in terms of you, where you left them. So
mm,
they haven't gotten past that yet. Children are in therapy for the most part, because of issues with their dads or because of the dad's behavior. Um, but they're still there, and you can't just take them out of that space just because you've been 30 days clean, 60 days clean, and you're not,
right.
and I've been through that stage, and it hurts, but you got to understand that it don't work like that. It don't work like that. And the only thing that you can do, and what I've learned is, because I've talked to her, and I have a daughter who she's still not super happy, but I know she loves me. I
Mm,
know she loves me, and you can see glimmers. But the only way I'm seeing the glimmers is because I'm consistent. And as crazy as this may sound, social media plays a big part in this. And people may find that crazy, me saying that, but children are constantly online. They're constantly on their phones. So I stay positive. I stay consistent in what I'm doing, because if I'm not speaking to my child, she's seeing me there. If she's not physically with me, I know she's seeing me there. So that's a lot of my drive in life. But everything that I do is, and a big part of it is, I want them to see that. I want
yep.
them to see the consistency. They're not going to always accept and want to be around you, if because of the things that happen. So at least on the days that they don't want to speak, at least they see me. Oh, there goes dad again. There
Yeah.
he goes again. So, as mundane as that may seem to some people, I utilize that because I know that's a big thing in kids' lives. And the only thing that you can do, and what I do, is stay consistent. And a person is going to come around when they come around. You can't force it. I've tried to force it, and when you get rejected, it hurts. So,
Yeah.
um, I just let them express themselves, and you kind of got to wait on them. You're on their terms.
Yeah. I was having a conversation recently about you'd mentioned that you know how your daughter loves you, right? And I was having a conversation with someone recently about this idea that, it isn't when you're trying to heal relationships with people who feel like they've been betrayed, it doesn't necessarily come down to love. It comes down to their sense of safety around you and their sense of security around you. So you could have the love piece intact, but if you don't have the safety and the security piece intact, that's the hurdle that, takes time. That's the hurdle that consistency. That's the hurdle that, kind of a different softer approach may be needed in order to kind of get that piece back. So sounds like, that's the track that you're on. I've never heard of, someone tell me that one of the reasons why they were on social is to show their consistency, particularly to their kids. I think that's pretty awesome.
It's a resume.
Yeah. No, I
It's a
love that, man.
resume.
I love that.
And I just know their eyes are on it. People, just like even off of social media, people, if you've been living a certain way for a long time, people are watching. Wait, let's see if wait, he said this the last time, or so they're
Mm.
always watching. And that's a big part of the world now. That's a big part of society. So they can watch me in person, but hey, you can also watch me here. I'm going to do the same thing on and off. There's no difference. This is my life, and I put it out there. Just that I'm just vulnerable that way. And if they see consistency, man, you should see family members. Uh, the way it builds up, the DMs. Hey, I see you. These are family members who probably didn't believe in me because of my history before. So it works. It
How have
works.
some of your how have some of your family members who are also, coming from a lot of the same places that you're coming from, how have they accepted the change that you've gone through? And in any way, has that caused them to reflect on their own lives and seek out their own help? Maybe not necessarily just with, substances, but I mean, we all come from a certain degree of trauma, I mean, in my opinion, we could all use some healing from. So what's kind of your family's perspective on your journey, and has that had a ripple effect on how they're pursuing their own lives?
Yeah, that's a great question because I was just talking to my wife this morning. I got a DM this morning from a guy. He's not necessarily family, but he's a guy that I've known from my neighborhood for a long time. And family like him, uh, it took a while, but then, like I said, it was slowly falling, and then the momentum picked up. And a lot of them were, I'm proud of you, and then I'm proud of you to go to, hey, how did you get into this, or how did you get into that? And then I'm all open to answer the questions. I've had female friends of mine come to me, hey, my husband, hey, he this is going on, can you help me with this? And I'm like, it blows me away sometimes, but it's because it's not normalized, but I'm normalizing it, I guess, in my community and in my family by just openly talking about things. So it has had a good effect on family. I've had them reach out and say, "Hey, I know I need to stop drinking. Hey, what'd you do? How'd you stop drinking?" So the questions I get asked on the regular, they blow me away because they're asking me. If you know me back then, it's like, uh, yeah, you wouldn't think that would be happening, and a lot of them say that, like, bro, if you can do this, then
Mm.
yeah. So that made a difference.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads me to, a few final questions that I have for you as we start to wrap things up. But in that same light, when someone comes to you who is on the fence, maybe they're curious about what a life out, after, the abuse of alcohol could look like for them, but they don't necessarily know what their first step's going to be. What is it that you tell them?
Well, the first thing I tell them is, you know, everybody's not ready because I had somebody tell me that. I don't try to discourage them, but I tell them because I know, like me in the beginning, my initial thought was, hey, I want to get, this is not right. And like, I'm feeling like I want to change my life or I want to stop doing this. But I had a guy tell me, and I think I told the story. if you're not ready, you're not ready. But I always say to them, because a person can get discouraged, and I've had people come to me and say, man, I want to stop drinking. What'd you do to stop drinking? And then, I won't hear from them, but I may see them online drinking. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that inside of them, they think that I possibly think, because they'll kind of avoid me. I've done that before. So
Mm-hmm.
I just tell them, just start getting honest with yourself. They got programs. I'm like, reach out to me, reach out to somebody. You can do inpatient programs, you can do outpatient programs, but you have to become a part of a community. There's people out there who thinking just like you. And I always tell them about people, places, and things. You got to remove yourself from the people, places, and things that you normally been doing, because that's going to play a big part in you not drinking. But I do always congratulate them on, hey, that's the first step. Not wanting to do it anymore, not wanting to use anymore. But like a guy told me before, there's a way to stay clean. There's literally a step by step way to stay clean. You just have to actually apply yourself and use the steps. Uh, People, places, and things. That's a big part of it. It's just certain rules. If you just go by the rules, then you'll stay clean. But innately, you want to inside, you have to be done. And I always tell them, once you're on the bottom floor, you can't go anywhere but up
Mm-hmm.
if you're down there. So I encourage them to just connect with somebody, or connect with me. I say you can bug me anytime.
That's awesome. Uh, Last question that I have, and then we'll wrap it up. Uh, in some of your darker days, after you were 24, after you got out of facilities, you're running around for the next decade or so, and then you start recognizing that I got an issue, I got to address this thing. How would someone from the outside looking in have known that you were struggling and that you had a problem if you didn't explicitly tell them yourself?
Um, it depends on which someone. Are you talking about, like, family members,
Could be a
or
family
just
member. I mean, I know that you've mentioned that there were folks within the system that had
Mhm.
that recognized it, but I mean, they're almost trained to be able to do that, right? I'm talking about kind of your people, what I mean, your folks.
uh, just being productive, not working. Of course, your physical appearance. I went through. I'm gonna say I went through a year, about a year in PCP, right?
Mm,
Um, and I may have looked like a skeleton. I may have
mm,
looked like a skeleton. I lost some friends to gun violence, and I don't use that as an excuse, because I was inside. Drug use was rampant anyway in my life. So, but I went through a year of that, and I probably your physical appearance. Um, uh, I've always taken care of myself, but just not being productive. No gym. People can tell. Hanging around the wrong people. No job. Um, Not coming around. When you do come around, man, it would to get into it would take so long. It would take
mm,
so long. But yeah, just finding you places. My grandmother finding me in the bushes, just all types of stuff. Just the examples, just being, yeah. I'm thinking about it now. It's just crazy, man. Just finding you passed out. My physical appearance, I've lost so much weight, just look like a skeleton. Um,
mm.
and just not being productive in life, man, and not coming around, trying, secluding myself, isolating myself, because you feel ashamed.
Yeah, you're trying to hide. You're
Yeah,
trying to hide.
and,
I appreciate that, man. I think vulnerability is an underrated superpower, man. Like, I feel like especially as a black man, where I could speak from, is that when you get to a place where you can find some vulnerability, then you can start doing some things that you were never really able to do before, because you truly are stepping into the light and not hiding anymore. And I think that that's incredibly empowering. So I appreciate everything that you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you continue to show up on the platforms. I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. I know that we didn't get into some of the crazier stuff that I know you have in your library, But
Whew.
where can folks find you so that they can get more Daryl and get more some of these these stories that you share?
Man, oh man. Well, my IG is progression underscore 365. My TikTok progression underscore 365, and progression. Well, the podcast, I'm kind of getting it together on YouTube, but I'll be posting it on IG, and Daryl Palmer, DarylPalmer on Facebook. So, yeah, I'm kind of getting things together, uh, technically, and with my YouTube channel. So it'll be a lot more stories told soon. And y'all guys forgive me if I was kind of all over the place, but I'm just getting into this
Look, man, these journeys are complex. It's challenging to capture everything in 40, 50 minutes.
thing. Yeah.
But I do appreciate it, man. Let's stay connected. Y'all go check out Daryl. I tell you, his stories, at least the ones that he shared that I've heard. They're well worth the listen. He sounds like he's full of them. I'll continue to tune in. Thanks for joining, brother. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. I appreciate you guys listening to the Stacking Days podcast. I hope this episode added value to your recovery and wellness journey. Before we go our separate ways, let's connect on social. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Stacking Days or via the website www.stackingdays.com. By supporting the show, you can play a direct role in amplifying people of color in their pursuit of recovery. The easiest way to do that is to subscribe or hit the follow button. This way, you'll never miss an episode, all while playing an active part in creating the ecosystem where diverse voices in healing matter. This show is for the purpose of education and connection and is not a replacement for therapy or recovery care. For more information on the resources and support available, take a look at SAMHSA and some other resources shared in the description. Until we meet again, be well, one day at a time.